Well, shalom and welcome to our Facebook family, as well as our eventual YouTube family, and all other families that this may be shared with as we go on. I think you all can see my name up in the back. I don't know why I can't get this room bright enough for the image on the screen behind me to be better. But we're working on it. Technology. Anyway, we're going to open up with the word of prayer, and then we'll go right ahead and get started. However, before opening up with this word of prayer, I want to give a shout out to Pastors Robin and Brandy Cunningham. They are the young pastor couple that are helpful in helping me get this out to more people. I have a small audience myself, but they have a following on YouTube and Rumble, and they take these recordings and they put them on their platforms. And what happens after that, I don't know, but at least this means that the few people that that may follow me or watch me on Facebook, it gets out to a larger audience. And, you know, God has me prepare these teachings, and I believe it's for a reason. Been doing it for several years now. And as time goes on, I gain even more knowledge and understanding myself. I don't profess to be any type of Bible scholar or anything of that nature. But just going through this has really been a benefit to me, and as well as I hope it has been to those that are listening in. Now, after we open up in prayer, then I do some light adjustments. I have to have extra light so that you can see me, and then we'll get started right away. So join with me now in prayer, if you will. Father, in the name of Yeshua, I surrender myself unto you. I say, Lord, I am your vessel. I am nobody's guru, anything of that nature. I am just your oracle. And I say, Lord, use me according to your will. Speak through me, to me, and to those who are under the sound of my voice. And I humbly give you all praise, all honor, and all glory for this type of technology that we are able to actually put together a teaching and put it out for the masses to see. And I pray, Father, that everyone that watches this either now or later on, rewatch the recording, that they learn something more about who we are in you. Our Messianic Jew brothers, they already know because they are Christian Jews who believe that Jesus is the Messiah. Orthodox Jewish brethren, that's a little bit different, but that's another story. But we're going to go ahead and give you all praise, honor, and glory, and then we'll get started with this after I make these light adjustments. Amen and amen. Okay, so I'll go ahead and make these light adjustments, and then we'll get, as they say down in Australia, we'll get started straight away. How about that? We're doing light adjustments, and we are currently celebrating a Jewish holiday. And that holiday it talks about light. Praise the Lord. Every now and then I might pop back up with my pointer to point out some areas of significance. Okay. Now, the last teaching I did, my goodness, this is kind of small. I just noticed that the whole image is not on the screen. Let me do a little bit of adjustment. Okay. Still not enough. it's a little bit more complicated when you're kind of a one-man production set. Because it's difficult to be in front of the camera and behind the camera all at the same time. And my brightness just don't seem light enough to me. Anyway, let's go ahead and get started. Now, in our last teaching, I talked about the Hebrew or the Jewish holiday called the Festival of Lights. And this festival was the only festival for the previous month, and it pretty much is the same thing for this month that we're now moving into. We are now moving into a new month, and I'll share that with you momentarily. Now, how we're going to start this is with what we finished with last month. Because the Festival of Lights, as I said earlier, it connects the 2 months, Kislev, which was the month that we're leaving now, and the month that we're going to be talking about momentarily. Okay, so the last thing we looked at last month was this menorah, okay? And I only covered pretty much the lighting procedure, but I'm going to I'm going to do a recapitulation, if you will, of that, just to kind of give you an idea of what it's all about. All right, now, the Festival of Lights, it is called Hanukkah, as that little line just shows up under the bottom of it. And it's also, it's pronounced Hanukkah, and it can be spelled a different way, but pronounced the same. Now, this picture, it shows an 8-candle menorah because the Festival of Lights is an 8-day celebration. We are now in day 6 of the 8 days of celebrating the Festival of Lights. So as you can see, we're in the month of December, almost near the middle of the month, and this celebration started in the month of Kislev, and now we're in the month of December, and it's spilling into that month. So that's what it does. It connects the 2 months. Now, the candles, when they are lit during the Festival of Lights, they are lit according to the way our Hebrew brethren read and number. And that is that they go, unlike us, they go from the right back towards the left, and whereas we go from our left to our right. Now, if you notice, the middle candle, it doesn't have a number, and there's a reason for that. Because the middle candle, and that will make the menorah is called an 8-stem menorah. The middle one is not counted. And the reason for that, the middle one is called the Shemesh, or the one who serves. It also has another name, and that name is called the giver of lights. So what ends up happening is, let me go back. The giver of lights represents Messiah to the Orthodox Jews who are still waiting for Messiah to come. But to us Gentiles and our Messianic Jewish brethren, it represents Jesus. Okay, so on day 1, the Shemesh is lit. And then the Shemesh is removed from the middle position to the candle for day 1. And it provides the light for day 1. And then it's put back in its position. Those 2 candles stay lit throughout the duration. Now, because these are candles, they will eventually burn down. As you can see, a lot of them in the image, they're burnt down. And all they do, when they burn down, they're just replaced. And I did that with my menorah prior to getting the electric one that I have now. Subsequently, the next day after, on day 2, the Shemesh provides the light to the candle for day 2. And the procedure keeps on until all 8 of them are lit, like they're all already lit now, because I could not find a picture where I couldn't figure out a way where I could generate, because show them empty and then show the lights. And then I get that to that point eventually. But that's how that works. And if I had my menorah, my little electric menorah in here, you would see that from the right going back to the left, all 4 of those are lit. And then after the Shemesh, the next 2 are lit. So tomorrow will be day 7 of the 8-day celebration. And tomorrow is Thursday. Friday will be day 8. I had to kind of figure that out. Now, I'm going to say this real quick, too. A lot of things that we're looking at, when we look at stuff that pertains to our Jewish brethren, things are a little bit different. So we got to remember that. And you'll see what I'm talking about momentarily. Now, with what we've just covered, that brings us to the story about the Festival of Lights. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to start out with the story of it. And on this slide here, we're going to look at the story of the Festival of Lights, and we're going to go to some history about it. But first thing you need to understand is that the Jewish temple, it is considered a most sacred and revered place within the city. And we're talking about Jerusalem. But there are Hebrew temples, Jewish temples all over the world, and they all are considered the same way. They are very sacred and very revered. Now, King Solomon, the son of King David, he built the first temple during about the 10th century. That's estimated to be about 1000 BC. Now, the construction took roughly about 7 years, and the nation of Israel enjoyed peace during that time. However, in spite of the peace, and those of you who know the Bible, you know what, in all of his wisdom, Solomon still allowed sin to enter into the nation. And as a result of that, the city and the temple was attacked and sieged and destroyed by the nation of Babylon, a heathen nation. Hundreds of years later, the city and the temple were rebuilt by King Herod the Great. Now that was sometime between 516 and 350 BCE, depending on whatever your historical source is. But again, sin abounded. And that opened up Israel again to siege and destruction. And this time, it was by what was considered the most powerful nation on earth, which was the Roman Empire. Now, we're going to go into what happened after the second siege and destruction of Jerusalem and the temple. Okay, let's go on. I was interrupted with a phone call. Now, it was during the second siege that led to the story, which is not recorded in the Bible, about the Festival of Lights. But it is recorded in 2 books, and those books are called Maccabees 1 and Maccabees 2. And then there's a later collection known as the Apocrypha that it's also in. So what ended up happening was, this was called the Maccabean Revolt. that took place. So what were the events that led to this revolt? Well, in the year 168 BCE, the Syrian tyrant named Antiochus, he sent his soldiers against Jerusalem. The Syrians actually decimated the city and the temple. Antiochus also abolished Judaism pretty much across the board. He outlawed the observances of Shabbat, all of the different festivals that the Jews enjoyed or participated in. He even abolished circumcision. And on top of that, he ordered the Jewish people to worship the Greek gods. And the punishment for that, if they didn't do it, was death. So, what was the straw that broke the camel's back? On the 25th day of Kislev, in the year 168 BCE, Antiochus had the audacity to rename the temple for the Greek god Zeus. And when he did that, that was the straw that broke the camel's back. That provoked the Jewish people to start building a resistance army. And that's where you have the Maccabean revolt that took place. That is what we're going to talk about. Okay. This resistance was led by a priestly family known as the Hasmoneans or Maccabees. It's like they have two different names. Judah Maccabee became the lead strategist and the military chief of the resistance. Now, in spite of the fact that the Jewish people were seriously outnumbered, Judah Maccabee led his resistance army to miraculously rout the Syrians in two major battles. And as a result, that completely drove them out of the land of Israel, and that holds to this day. Now, history indicates that there are several key indicators as to what led to the success of the Maccabean resistance, in spite of them being overwhelmingly outnumbered. One of the things is the Jewish just outright refusal to submit to the religious demands of Antiochus and his people. Another was their struggle against total assimilation into a Hellenistic culture and being forced to do that. Kind of like the force that was put on people to get the COVID vaccine. Okay. Also, their struggle against the loss of their Jewish identity. That's happening in society today too. Another thing was their fight for their Jewish political autonomy. They didn't want to be ruled by a Hellenistic nation. And ultimately, it was their self-determination that caused them to be victorious. Now, one thing you got to understand, this is a rabbit trail. Although Israel is a small nation, it is a powerful nation when it comes to wars, because they've been fighting wars forever. And Jesus even told them that about this. So they've been fighting wars forever. So that's pretty understandable. Now, let's look at how did Hanukkah begin, all right? So according to legend, once the Jewish temple was retaken and Rome was driven out of Israel, the Maccabees entered into their destroyed temple, but they immediately proceeded to light the Ner Tamid. Now, the Ner Tamid, it is called the eternal light, and it burns constantly. But of course, due to lack of respect for it, Antiochus and his people, they just put the lights out. They didn't care. That was not important to them. Here's a drawing of what a Ner Tamid looked like during that time. Now, they had a problem though. There was only a 1-day supply of oil in that Ner Tamid. So a messenger was sent to secure more oil. Problem with that, it took 4 days to get there and 4 days to get back, an 8-day round trip. However, when the messenger returned with more oil, the people had observed that one Ner Tamid that was lit 8 days earlier, it miraculously continued to burn throughout the entire trip. Therefore, Jewish rabbis of the Talmud, they attributed the 8 days of Hanukkah to the miracle of a single container of oil that's only supposed to last 1 day, lasting for 8 full days. That is how it all got started. Now, another little rabbit trail. All of this happened after Jesus ascended back into heaven. Okay? All of this happened throughout the whole reading of the New Testament. This was all leading up to the Roman siege and destruction. When you watch the movie The Chosen, you're seeing everything that took place, because you got to think about this. King Herod the Great, okay, the nation was already under Roman siege, okay, and Herod was called a king. He was just the king of the Jews. This is the reason why when Jesus said he was a king, or they called Jesus a king, they fought against that. So all of these things happened after Jesus ascended back into heaven, and as a result of what they called the sect, these people that believed in Jesus. So eventually, that's when they destroyed the city and everything, and the Maccabees drove them out, and Israel has been free of Roman occupation since then. Now, let's take a look at the calendar so that we can see how some of these things add up. All right, now I'm going to point out some things on the calendar here so you're going to see my arm. Now, as we view the calendar, one of the first things we're going to see is that this is Tevet, and the year is 5784. Okay? The month of Tevet, it starts in the month of December and it spills into January, because these months are lunar months, not Gregorian months. Now, when we look at our Gregorian calendar, I picked this up from Sunday, November 26th, which was the 14th day of Kislev. So as we go all the way through to the 17th day of Kislev, on the 18th day of Kislev, we moved into the month of December. Okay? Hanukkah began on the evening, on sunset of the 24th, according to the Gregorian calendar. But according to the Hebrew calendar, when the sun sets, this day, the 25th, actually begins. So during the daylight, we was in the eve of Hanukkah. When the sun set, the first candle was lit, and at sunset on this day, that was the completion of a full 24-hour period which marked the end of that day, and then the second candle was lit. Also, if you notice I put this up here just for our Gregorian calendar people, but if you look at the 10th day of Tevet, that is a fast day so that the Jews will remember the siege and destruction of the temple and the city of Jerusalem by Rome. What happened back in when the Babylonians attacked the city and destroyed everything, the wall that was that Solomon built, that wall still stands today. That was the only thing that remained of the temple was the wall. And in Jerusalem, it is called the Wailing Wall. We talked about that before. Okay, so that pretty much covers the calendar. So as you can see, we are on. Let me get down here where I'm in the right place. Yeah. Okay, on the 7th day of December, which was the 24th day of Hanukkah. That's when Hanukkah began. The 24th day of Kislev. That's when Hanukkah began. Hanukkah went in, and I said this earlier, it went in on Friday. Okay, so we're now in the 6th day. And that's what my little lights, when I look back there, show. Now, so with that, we're now ready to move into learning about the month of Tevet. Okay. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to take some time to think about, all right, we're now going to learn about the month of Tevet 5784. So we're going to start out with looking at the placard for the month. I'm going to leave that up there a few minutes and not a few minutes, but a few seconds. Now, there are 8 primary points that I'm going to point out from this placard. There's not a whole lot about the month of Tevet, just like it was not a whole lot about the month of Kislev, other than the Maccabean revolt. And that's not recorded in the Bible, but it is in Jewish history. So now we're going to go and we're going to revisit all these different points. I don't know how well you can see them on this screen up there. So let's look at it from this standpoint. At least you can see this a little bit better. I thought the light was going to be a lot brighter, but it's still not as bright as I wanted it to be. Anyway, Tevet. It is the 10th month on the Hebrew calendar, counting from the month of Nisan. And that is Nisan. It marks the beginning of the ecclesiastical or the God calendar. If you want to count from the time the year changed, we went from 5783 to 5784. That was during the month of Tishri, 4 months ago. But God, in His infinite wisdom, set it up according to the ecclesiastical calendar for a reason. To be in the 10th month, the number 10 is a number of godly authority. So see, had we gone by the civil calendar, which is the creation calendar, everything would have been out of whack. So God's godly authority would not have been in the place where it's supposed to be. The stone for the month of Tevet is the turquoise. The Mazal, or the constellation for the month of Tevet, that is Capricorn, or the goat. The Hebrew letter for the month of Tevet, that is the letter Ayin. The Hebrew tribe associated with the month of Tevet is the tribe of Dan. Now, Tevet is the month of holy anger and righteous indignation, as read in Ephesians chapter 4, verses 26 and 27. And they read, Be ye angry and sin not. Let not the sun go down upon your wrath, neither give place to the devil. So that is how that started. Now, let's look at some pictures of some of the different things that we just talked about from the placard. I'm going to talk about, first of all, we're going to look at the turquoise. Now, this particular image, it looks pretty much like the image that we saw earlier on the placard. The another view of the turquoise is the one that I use this a lot. This is when it's kind of strung up. It looks like it can be like a necklace or a bracelet or an anklet or something of that nature. But this picture shows the turquoise in its rough, unrefined condition. And notice how you can see a little aqua green. Do I need my pointer? Let me point that out. You can see a little aqua green in it. You see some blue, and you also see some traces of black in there. Okay. This picture here shows the variance. The primary colors are pretty much that kind of aqua type of green and that type of blue. But you notice in both of them, you still see those little traces of black in there. And then we have this picture here, which shows more of that black trace, but it still shows the two prominent colors. Now let's learn a little bit about the turquoise. Now the turquoise is an opaque blue to green mineral that is hydrous phosphate, a hydrous phosphate of copper and aluminum. Now it is rare and it is valuable in its final grades. Now, it has been prized as a gemstone for millennia due to its beautiful hue or color. But, like most other opaque gems, turquoise was devalued by the introduction of treatments, imitations, and synthetics that flooded into the market. However, real turquoise, it holds spiritual significance in the Bible beyond its beauty. It represents healing, protection, and spiritual connection. Oh, there's so much more we could talk about when we talk about the turquoise from some of my previous teachings. But I'm not going to belabor you with that for now. But I do want to close the talk of the turquoise with this one thing. In the book of Ezekiel, the turquoise is referred to as the throne of God. And I thought that was very, very significant and worthy of being mentioned. Now, let's talk a little bit about the letter that's assigned to the month of Tevet. Okay? And that is the letter Ayin. Now, this is what the Ayin looks like. Okay. Now, when we look at the Ayin, like most all Hebrew letters are a combination of other Hebrew letters. The Ayin, it consists of the Hebrew letter Vav, and that Vav is contained in the Hebrew letter Nun. So let me point out, this is the Vav, and this is the Nun. If you have a construct of the Hebrew alphabet, the Nun kind of, one of its shapes could be somewhat like the letter C turned backward. Okay? So that's why I say the Vav is contained in the Nun. All right. It is said that the Ayin is the 70th letter in the Hebrew alphabet. That's not necessarily the case, though. Its value is 70, but it is really the 16th of the 22 letters that make up the Hebrew alphabet. Okay? The iron, it represents the seeing eye. Now, I like this. Look at this image here. It represents the seeing eye. So here you have another picture of the iron. But in the Vav, you have an eye here and an eye there. In the Nun, you have an eye here and an eye there. Represents the seeing eye. And you can hear the word eye in the name iron. Now, the seeing eye asks the question, how do you and I see things? How do we see things? The question, do we see things through holy eyes or do we see things through fleshly eyes? One of my daily prayers is to ask the Lord to help me see things according to his vision, not my fleshly vision. Okay. Because if we look at things from a godly standpoint, what happens is if we allow our perceptions to be led by God, then we'll become like Solomon. We'll be wise. So I like that thought. Now there's a lot to that, and I'm just kind of skimming the surface, as you will. Now, the next thing the placket mentioned was the tribe associated with the month of Tevet. So let's take a look at that. The Hebrew tribe associated with the month of Tevet, and that is the tribe of Dan. But who is Dan? Well, I'm glad you asked. Now, Dan was Joseph's younger brother. And for those that may not remember, Joseph was the firstborn to his father Jacob by his most loved wife, Rachel. Okay, so then Joseph, because of the favor that he got from his father, he was sold into slavery by his brothers and considered dead. Rachel then gave Bilhah, her maidservant, to Jacob to father a child with a son for her. Okay, because she was somewhat barren. Bilhah gave birth to Dan, and then finally, Rachel had Benjamin, the last born. So that gave then Joseph. Then he had not Joseph, Jacob. Then he had 12 sons, and one was considered dead. Okay, Benjamin being the baby. And we talked about that last month, that after Benjamin was born, Rachel died. Okay, back to Dan. Oh, by the way, you can, if you look in Genesis 35:25, you can read about that. Now, back to Dan. Dan's name means judge. On his deathbed, Jacob prophesied about Dan, and he said that Dan will provide justice to his people. He also added that in this prophecy is kind of like a furtherance of the justice. He said that Dan would be like a serpent by the roadside. He would be a viper along the path. He would bite at the horse's heel so that the rider would tumble backward. In other words, that was a warring faction that is going to bring justice to the injustice being done to the people of Israel. That's what that's talking about. You can also read about that in Genesis chapter 49, verse 16. Now, All that's well and good. However, I guess there's always something bad in everything good, isn't there? The tribe of Dan was the first of all the Hebrew tribes to plunge deeply into pagan idolatry. But in spite of that, they still provided justice for Israel as prophesied. But because of plunging deep into pagan idolatry, in the book of Revelation, when it talks about the 144,000 special chosen servants, all of Jewish descent, and I figured that to be 12,000 per tribe because you have 12 tribes. And we know um, that Joseph's two sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, was added to bring the numbers back up to 12 because, first of all, Joseph was considered dead, and Eli became the Levitical priest. So you take that two away, now you're down to 10. Taking Manasseh and Ephraim as his own, that brought the number from 10 back to 12. Okay, so that's how that worked. However, the tribe of Dan was not counted among the 144,000 that you see listed in the book of Revelations. Isn't that a shame? Isn't that a shame? Now, next thing we're going to look at is, you know how each state in America has its own state flag? Each tribe of Israel, they had their own flags too, okay, of the 12 tribes of Israel. So we're going to look at their flags. Okay. The first one is the banner. Now, this banner is an indoor object. You can see by looking at the platform at the bottom of it. And that's something that will be used inside. Notice that in the prophecy, the shield, I don't think my pointer, no, my little pointer won't work. But you see the snake on the shield. When they use for their state, or that they used when they were traveling into war, this was the flag that was flown. But you notice there's an empty space over there because of the prophecy and because of the actions. Dan was the judge for the tribe of Israel, and Dan did provide. So they had a banner and two flags, the flag of justice. All right. Next, we're going to look at the Mazal, or the constellation associated with the month of Tevet. And we already know that is Capricorn, the goat. Now, I'm not going to go into a lot with this because what I'm looking at mostly is the decans. But as you can see in this picture here, kind of a Greek-looking type of superimposition in the heavenlies of the Capricorn. It's like the head and front legs of a goat, and then a serpent in the back. And then the star constellation is incorporated within that. And this beautiful picture here shows the star constellation separate from the rest. And earlier, I pointed out about the decans that's assigned to each constellation or Mazal. And that is what I consider to be pretty much important. So that's what we're going to do now. We're going to take a look at the decans associated with the constellation or the Mazal or Capricorn the goat. Now, the one thing about these decans of Capricorn is all three of them seem to point to leadership styles when I looked them up. And I thought that was pretty interesting. And you got to remember that there are 36 decans. There's 12 months on the lunar calendar, just like they are on our Gregorian calendar. Each month is assigned a constellation or a Mazal. Okay? And with that, God assigned deacons to them. Those deacons are, I believe they're prophetic. I believe that they talk about either what God is doing or what God is going to do. Here's an example. Let's take a look at deacon number 1. In deacon number 1, it indicates that God is going to bring in leadership that is idealistic, leadership that is faithful, leadership that is affectionate and is patient. But God at the same time is going to eliminate leadership that is temperamental, leadership that is intolerant, and leadership that is unreasonable. Those kinds of leaders God is going to do away with. And I think that is the type of leadership that we have right now. And God is going to do away with that. Deacon number 2 continues on to say that God is going to bring in leadership that is reliable. Well, I don't know about you all, but I don't think this leadership we have right now is reliable. God is going to bring about leadership that is stable. I don't believe that this leadership is stable. God is going to bring about leadership that is imaginative, that has ideas. Okay? And at the same time, God is going to eliminate leadership that is pessimistic, that is weak, and that is unfaithful. And I think that applies to today's leadership. Deacon number 3. It indicates that God is bringing in leadership that is intelligent. Leadership is good with communications. Leadership is well disciplined. The leadership that is ambitious to produce positive rather than negative outcomes. And at the same time, God is going to eliminate leadership that is power hungry, leadership that holds grudges, leadership that is ambitious for only self-gain, which is what I see today. That's what we see in this leadership today. Okay. That was short, that was sweet, but that is what brings us to the close of this teaching. I like the prophetic words that it's saying, and I believe that this leadership that God is talking about through these deacons, I believe that that is closely around the corner. So I want to thank you all for taking the time to spend with me tonight in this teaching. I pray that you've gotten something out of this, and I look forward to our next teaching. So with that, I'll say shalom and good night.